Today I'm with the first pick. It's Young Fella Wednesday, which means we're talking NFL draft. And finally, 5 weeks into the college football season, we get to talk about producer Striker's favorite player, Penn State quarterback Drew Allar. Been a lot of first-round buzz around him for 2 years now, and against Oregon last Saturday ran. Underwhelming is the word that comes to mind. We'll also talk about his counterpart, Dante Moore, several other standout quarterbacks we've yet to hit this fall. And as usual, we'll talk about some non-quarterbacks who got our attention. But with the first pick, viewer submitted player that's been really impressive so far this season. And like we always do, we'll check in on the NFL rookie starting quarterbacks, Cam Ward, Jaxson Dart, and now, of course, Dillon Gabriel. And finally, we'll show some love to God's position, the 2 first-round running backs who had big days for their teams in losses. I'm Ryan Wilson, that's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. This is episode 302. And Ran, time's ticking, 204 days till the 2026 NFL draft, Pittsburgh, PA. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. Good. You know, it's always a special day when we have to jump on and do an emergency pod. You know what that typically means, that some big breaking news has occurred. So always good to see my friend Ryan Wilson on a Young Fellow Wednesday.
On a Young Fellow Wednesday, that's right. You were the young fellow on this podcast, but we call it Young Fellow Wednesdays because we talk about all these college guys that are draft eligible. Then we talk about some of our favorite rookies. So let's get to it. And by the way, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify of a draft-eligible FBS or FCS player you want us to evaluate, and we'll do it. We're going to do it this week. We'll do it next week, and as long as you keep submitting them, we'll keep evaluating them. All right. I am super excited to talk about this group of quarterbacks. We won't start with Boo Allar. That's my nickname for him until he turns the corner. And these are 1, 2, 3, 4 guys we have yet to talk about this fall. We talked about a couple of them over the summer, and then we'll revisit Dante Moore, who we talked about after the Northwestern win with their big matchup on the road last Saturday against Penn State. Let's start, though, with the Alabama quarterback, Ty Simpson. And I'll be honest, didn't pay a lot of attention to Alabama early on. They lost that Florida State game, and, we talked about – I went back and watched Earl Little Jr., the safety. We haven't talked about him yet, but we will, the Florida State safety. But Ty Simpson,
you took the guy I had circled.
For what?
No, here to bring up on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, our buddy Brian McFadden, FSU's very own, texted me immediately after that Alabama game and said, "You better go watch Earl Little Jr." And you and I talked about him for a minute back then. But Ty Simpson's where I want to start. The Alabama quarterback, former 5-star. He replaced Jalen Milroe 2 seasons ago, I believe, for a hot minute when Jalen was struggling, and they got right in Nick Saban's last year. Last year was the Jalen Milroe show. But against Georgia, I was excited to go watch him play because this dude can spin it. And I was incredibly impressed with how well he played against Georgia. Went back and watched some of his other throws in previous games, and he has arm talent. We talk all the time about layering the ball to the second level. He can do that. He's incredibly smart in the pocket. He seems to have a sense of what teams are trying to do pre-snap. And then when things change, so the picture changes post-snap, he does not get flustered. I talk a lot of times about frenetic feet in the pocket with these young quarterbacks, both in college and the NFL. You don't see that. He's a better athlete than Mac Jones. And I mentioned Mac Jones because he was the previous pocket passer at Alabama. Better arm than Mac Jones, too. Throws with anticipation, throws with accuracy at all 3 levels. His numbers would be higher, Ran, if Ryan Williams wasn't struggling with the yips right now. He dropped a bomb early in that game against Georgia that would have been a touchdown. He dropped a touchdown against Wisconsin the previous week. And I appreciate Ty's aggressiveness in terms of making tight window throws, trusting his arm, trusting his receivers. And I have, we talked last week about Fernando Mendoza's clean game and that whooping they put on Illinois. This was an incredibly clean game against a team full of guys that are going to get drafted.
Yeah, man, it was and I watched this game on TV and was trying to flip back and forth with the other big game that was on at the time. But the thing and why I put him on the list and why he stood out to me was just he just had some it to him, if that makes sense. He just had that it to him. And I come from the school of thought. There are 2 people in your organization, whether you know the most about football or the least about football, but there are 2 people that should have some type of gravitational pull to them when they walk into your building or they walk through the building, and that's your head coach and your quarterback, right? Yep. You don't have to know anything about anything, but when those 2 people walk in the room, eyes should automatically go to them and like, hey, who is that?
Right.
because that person has some presence, some it to him. And just throughout that game, it never felt like Alabama was out of it.
Mm-hmm.
When he was on the field, it felt like, okay, they're going to convert on 3rd and 15. And I don't know what that is. And I can't wait to talk to, my people over at Alabama just to see how he carries himself around the building. I was around the building a couple times when Bryce Young was there. So I've seen him walk through the building, seen kind of some of his mojo. And I think this guy has some serious presence. You mentioned it. We put up the numbers. The guy has 11 touchdowns and no interceptions on the season. So he's taking good care of the football. He can throw it. He can spin it. Like you said, he's accurate. And he gives you the threat to pull the ball down and run it. Now, he's not a guy that you're going to sit there and design 8 to 10 runs a game for. But if things break down, he can do some damage with his legs, which will cause defenses to freeze even more. And the cool thing about him is when you watch him outside of the pocket, when he pulls the ball down, he's keeping his eyes downfield, right? When he breaks contain, his eyes are still downfield. So that puts the defender in a weird spot.
Right.
Because it's like, do you drop coverage to go get the runner? Or do you stay back and now you might negate a 10-yard run. It may now be a 7-yard run, but this guy's a threat with his legs. So it was I was like you. I came to last week was the first real time that I sat there and watched him. And I'm really, really encouraged by what I saw.
And I keep saying it, like there's no Caleb Williams or Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert in this draft class, but there are a lot of guys that are going to be clumped together, and that's what makes it fun, trying to sort out the guys that are going to work at the next level, and the fit matters on all the stuff that we talk about here, and trying to come up with that list. Because I went back and watched a couple more games with Lenore Sellers. We talked about him in week 1, Virginia Tech game. He's gotten better, but the polish with Ty Simpson, there's no squinting involved. Lenore Sellers is so much upside, and he's, by all accounts, a great human being. But in terms of the football journey he's on, he's behind Ty Simpson for me. You disagree with that?
No, I don't. And we'll talk about another one of these young men later, here in this segment. But to me, and we talked about it coming into the year, especially when the artist or the quarterback formerly known, didn't come out as hot. And so it was like, okay, well, we knew about Nuss, and, we had talked about Drew Allar, and Mendoza was starting to make some waves in the summer, but you called it. You said there's going to be, anywhere from 1 to 3 of these guys that is going to come on the scene and kind of change the way we're looking at these things. And Ty Simpson is one, and one we talked about last week that we'll talk about here in a little bit, Dante Moore. And so they're going to, muddy the waters, if you will. And I was even thinking just before we got on for this show, like, because Ty Simpson is he a redshirt sophomore or? No,
I think he might be a senior. Let me double check real quick, because I think he's down the road a little bit. But I'll double check. Go ahead with your thought while I do that.
Yeah, but I was thinking. Okay, so he's a junior. So if you got Ty Simpson, who's a junior, Dante Moore, who I believe is a redshirt sophomore or junior, and all these guys come back with the quarterback formerly known as, will that factor into their decision for these two guys to be first-year starters? Will they go back and say, hey, let me go back and put another year, or will they take the Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance model where I'm the hottest thing going in a quote-unquote draft class that doesn't have a top-tier guy?
Yeah, and the flip side of that argument is that Carson Beck and Nussbus came back to school in a really weak quarterback draft class. What does that say about their decisions as well? Carson's helped himself so far. Nuss could be battling injuries, and Brian Kelly's been coy about it, but I think you talk to folks, they said he's been banged up. It's unclear whether he's helped himself. Yeah, Striker's right. Redshirt junior for Ty Simpson.
Redshirt junior, so basically a 4-year player.
Yeah, that's right. 2022 was his first year at Alabama.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to say this before we move on. I got a early day 2 grade on Ty Simpson right now.
I'm not. You know me.
I know you want to preach patience because that's how you were raised. I'm just like, all right, let's go. All right, so we'll put a pin in that one. do I want to put you on the spot or not? If you had to draft a quarterback today, Ty Simpson or Lenore Sellers?
Simpson.
Okay, well, I got that out of you at least. All right, next up, this is another one of Rand's nominations for Young Fellow Wednesday, and this young man, if you were to build a statue of Haynes King, it would look like Diego Pavia, because they feel like similar builds, but they do a lot of the same things well. Diego's a better thrower of the football, and you know, you make fun of the you know, you coach the what are you, under 8s flag football?
Yeah, 8U.
So you know how sometimes the quarterback has to do a little crow hop to get the ball down the field. Diego Pavia is the shortstop in the hole, getting a little crow hop, but he's getting it where it needs to go, and he is really good on short and intermediate throws. I give him credit, man. He will throw with anticipation. Deep throws are a little more sporadic, but whatever. And then he is a bulldog. He will win with his legs. He will run you over, and he just sounds like a cliche, but he wills himself to make the plays they need to make. And he has been an absolute fun story. I think he's 24, maybe almost 25, different for a quarterback than another position. But what a fun player to watch. I don't know if he gets drafted, but, you know, we talked about Haynes King as a good football player. These are the dudes you want on your team that show up in the biggest moments.
Listen, I put him on this list just merely from the standpoint of he has this Vanderbilt program ranked 16th in the nation.
Come on now.
And that is, you know, if you come from our era, and especially from my era, having played in the SEC. Now, I will say this about the Vandy program. It didn't matter what Florida's record was. It didn't matter what Vandy's record was. That was always one of our toughest games. If you go back, and I wasn't on this team, but if you go back and you look at the 96 national championship team that had everybody on it, you know, at the University of Florida, they only beat Vandy that year 6-0.
Whoa.
And that was just how that game was always played. But I put him on there, and I know it was against a Utah State team, but he had 5 touchdown passes, had another one on the ground. He's completing basically 75% of his passes on the season. And like you said, man, this kid is just a dog. I was actually at the Bama game last year when they beat Bama, and you just felt his presence out the gate. Now, they have him listed at 6 feet. I don't know if that's verified. He may be 6 feet with the helmet on, but he's a guy that, and I agree with you. I don't think he's not going to get drafted into the National Football League, but he is a guy that I would love to see in the CFL and love to see as a guy that will go up there and light it up and become an absolute star in the CFL if he chooses to. Because
hey,
I mean,
let me interrupt you real quick. I got the verifieds. What do you think his verified is for height?
I would say 5'10", 3.
5'0", 9'6". So he's just a hair under 5'10". Verified.
So that's why I said he might be 6 feet with the helmet on.
There you go.
You know, but see, guys like this, and let's take this here. Guys like this, the 5'9" quarterback at a Vanderbilt program. This is why NIL is a good thing, right? Because if there's no pro prospects for him, whether it's in the CFL, whether it's in the NFL, UFL, whatever the case may be, this young man can maximize on his star power that he's created here in Nashville. He can graduate from a prestigious university like Vanderbilt with some considerable amount of money in his pocket to start his life.
Right.
And so this is one of the good things about NIL. This young man can start life with a leg up with, let's just say on the low end, a couple $100,000 in his pocket and a Vanderbilt degree to start his life.
And man, that's historically reserved for people who come from money, because when you go to college, you're paying. I mean, Vanderbilt's probably $90,000 a year now if you don't get any help at all. Obviously, people get financial aid. But my point is that rarely does a person come out of the college who's middle class, and I'm assuming Diego's middle class. He could be limitlessly wealthy. I don't know. But my point is that you're going to come out tens of thousands of dollars in debt, best case, maybe 6 figures in debt. And to reverse that, flip that script, I say it all the time. Like we just finished paying off my college loans, and I'm a wee bit older than you. And I do sometimes wonder if you tell an 18-year-old, hey, man, I'll give you $200,000 to start your life. You don't have to go to school and get an English degree or whatever, and then make $30,000 a year with that English degree. And no disrespect to English majors. I'm just saying you're not a lawyer or a banker or a doctor. You might be better off. But that's a conversation for our other podcast. But I agree with you. And I was thinking sort of about the Diego Pavia model, thinking about my the St. Lawrence Division III football team, because you're not going to get the best athletes going to a small school, Division III school with no scholarships. But you can find dudes who can ball in high school who are 5'10", 155, or who are, 6'1", 275 offensive linemen who don't fit they're not going to play at the next level, Division I, Division II. And you can find ways to win if you have guys who are dogs like Pavia is, and you have good coaching. And, that's again, shout out to Diego. And I'm glad you put him on this list. 321, 5 touchdowns, did have 1 interception. And then he ran for 91 yards against Utah State. Love it. All right.
Hey, man, we're equal opportunity
supporters,
love givers over here.
Absolutely, man. Shout out to Diego. And look, Diego's out playing Arch Quavius and DJ Lagway to throw some shade your way. And it's not even close.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
All right, let's get
to another. I will be in attendance seeing Arch Quavius and DJ Lagway play against each other this weekend.
And I will be in attendance seeing Ty Simpson and Diego Pavia playing each other this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to Brewster Stryker's brother, who, if I recall correctly, is the trainer for the Alabama baseball team. Is that right, Stryker?
That is correct.
Yeah. So Stryker has some ties to Tuscaloosa. Ran ain't impressed, Stryker. Sorry.
I know.
No, I ain't listen. We all eyes on deck. Stryker's gonna be scouting and getting 2 games or getting 2 teams in. I'll be doing it, and I'm sure you'll be watching St. Lawrence.
Yeah, they hit a rough patch. They lost a homecoming game, so that's a reset button situation.
That's what I think. Next week, it'll be Ran and I running this episode, and Ryan will be doing the producing.
I'll be doing the Division III recap. They might need Billy Napier. Better be careful. He might be coaching St. Lawrence if he keeps it up. All right, enough taking shots at people. Let's get back to being positive. That's what this show's all about. Another young man I was super excited to watch, and he came on the scene in 2024 because they benched my guy Miller Moss, and Jayden Maiava came in and replaced him. And I don't have the verifieds for Maiava, but he's unofficially 6'4", 230. USC quarterback. They played Illinois this weekend after Illinois took that thumping, a 60-burger at the hands of our guy Fernando Mendoza last week that we talked about. I'm on the Maiava train. This dude can ball. 6'4", 230 unofficial. He can move outside the pocket, plays with composure, and he was harassed all day. And we'll talk about one of the edge rushers for Illinois who was getting after him a little bit. He moves inside the pocket incredibly well to find those windows. At 6'4", he's obviously a little taller than Kyler or Russ or whomever. He can make plays off structure, and I thought he was incredibly accurate off structure and layering the ball to the second level, to the sidelines, in front of defenders, over linebackers. Arm strength was there. He can spin it too. I'll be honest with you. I struggle at times when I go back and watch the tape and gauging how good these arms are. But it felt like a Ty Simpson type arm. It may be better, maybe worse. I'm not sure, but he could spin it. I wasn't concerned about him getting balls to where they needed to be. Thought he threw with anticipation as well, and that's something we talk about when you translate these guys to the next level. If you can do that, that solves some problems. They ended up losing that game. He threw for 442, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and ran 3 times for 14 yards. And, oh, by the way, I should shout out our guy Mekhi Lemon, who we talked about last week, the wide receiver. This dude had a coming-out party in this game. He's making himself some money with the way he played last weekend over the course of the season. What do you think of Jayden Maiava?
No, I see him a lot similar. He's a guy that I was kind of brought to my attention early, like you said, early in his career, because there was a lot of excitement around him when he was, a young pup. And so for me, when you were talking about the arm strength, the number one thing I look for is those opportunities to make that far hash throw, right? That far hash throw when you got to throw that out on the opposite side of the field. Can you drive it? And I think he can drive the ball that way. And like you said, he's 6'4". He's, whatever you said. What did you say the weight was? 230?
230, thereabouts.
And so that's plenty enough size, for him in the pocket to kind of withstand some of that heat, because we've seen some quarterbacks who I won't name that we've talked about on this show that, when that pressure is bearing down and you start to throw those Michael Jordan fadeaway passes because you're trying to not get hit, like guys like this will stand in there through the face of it and know that the pressure's coming, know the heat is coming, and still deliver an accurate on-time ball. So he's one I do want to study a little bit more because I like to break it down and look at third down throws and, all those situations. But I'm glad you put him on because he was a guy that, like I said, he came with some hype already, having talked to some people in the USC program. But he's one that I do want to study a little bit more.
Yeah, he was fun. And I keep telling you, man, this class just keeps getting deeper and deeper at quarterback, and it's going to muddle things up at the top. And that's good for us. It's a fun conversation to have. So shout out to Jayden Maiava. It's funny, as our guy Gus Johnson was calling the game, every time he said Maiava, I thought he was trying to say Miami. You know how sometimes folks say Miami? So that's how I remember how to pronounce his name correctly. So Jordan Maiava. Great game. Unfortunately, they lost that ball game, but that is okay.
Here's the I don't know what quite category to put this in, but is he from that lineage of Maiava/Maiavias that is related to The Rock? So that'll be one for us to look up and see if he's. I don't know if you follow wrestling, but there's a wrestling crew they call the Bloodline, and all these guys, the Usos, the Uces, they have they are all from this crazy long lineage of all these athletes. So I wonder if he is from that lineage. It's a high possibility that he is, for real.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I haven't followed wrestling since I was probably in 6th grade, and I say that growing up in North Carolina. I was an NWA guy. I don't know if you remember the regional wrestling. Oh, here we go. Oh, look at Producer Stryker is on his today. So Producer Stryker found this. If you're listening, yes, Jayden Maiava is distantly related to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because Jayden's uncle, Kaluka Maiava, is the grandson of Peter Maiava, who is Dwayne Johnson's adopted grandfather, making them distant relatives within the extended Maiava Anoi. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Family tree. Look at you.
So the I don't know how to say the Anoi. But that is the one wrestler. I think his name is Roman Reigns, who was a college football player. He played at Georgia Tech. I think he went undrafted to the Minnesota Vikings, and I think he had a cancer diagnosis, which kind of took him away from the game of football. But like I said, this is a family lineage that is a ton of great athletes have come through this family. See, pop culture, that's where I was looking for. And I said I didn't know which category to kind of put it in. But this is why you got to stay connected, got to keep your ear to the street to know these small little things. Because low key, when it comes late in the draft and you're looking for undrafted guys, you look for bloodlines. And I'm gonna give a little spoiler here. I'm gonna give my secret thing I like to do to help me with the undrafted process. I like to go back and look at those college rankings, whether it's, I'll say from a Paramount CBS Sports family, the 247s, top 150 classes or top 300 classes. And then when these guys come out in the draft, especially guys who are later in the draft, I like to go back and look at where they were ranked. And I typically will err on the side of those guys that were top 100, 150, 300 guys because they've always been a guy, right? They've always been a guy, or guys that have bloodlines because they know what it is. So I always kind of err on the side of that. So that's one little trick I used to like to use when I was in that position.
A little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Because, they have always been the best athletes on the field. And sometimes it is interesting to go back and look at the 5-star quarterbacks from 6 years ago and some of the names that you don't even recognize because for whatever reason, they didn't get to where, we had all thought they might get to, but it doesn't mean they're any less athletic than they were.
I will say this, if for and giggles, I think it's the 2006 recruiting class. I want to say that I think it featured whatever the class was that had like AJ Green, Julio Jones, like that class was absolutely sick. Like Cam Newton was ranked like 100 and something. Andrew Luck was ranked 100 and something.
Oh, he was?
But like that class, absolutely sick.
Interesting. That was Andrew Luck, RG3, Ryan Tannehill. They were on the same draft class. Cam was a year before.
No, not draft class, the recruiting class.
Yeah, I was thinking about when they came out, who would have been in that recruiting class with them 4 to 5 years prior. That's how I did my math.
Patrick Peterson. It was Janoris Jenkins. It was AJ Green, Julio Jones. Man, it was a ton of dudes.
All right. Well, that'll give me something to do today. I got nothing else going on. All right. Hey, look, let's talk Dante Moore first because I want to keep this positive, and then we'll turn to Drew Allar. So Dante Moore, the Oregon quarterback, I think he is a legit redshirt sophomore. I'll check real quick. But either way, I was talking to someone about him, and they said they think he's the best pure passer in this class alongside Carson Beck, who we talked about last week or the week before, because Carson's turned the corner a little bit here in 2025. But Dante Moore, I wrote this down about 15 times watching him play, not just against Penn State on the road, but in previous weeks when we talked about him. Elite composure. He is always composed. Nothing rattles this young man, no matter the situation, no matter how the play is going, no matter the time of the clock. He makes NFL throws consistently. He can make plays off script. And he is, we talk about Diego Pavia being a gamer. Dante Moore is a gamer. He's just a little more athletic, a little bigger, and he does a lot of things really, really well. And good luck keeping him out of the conversation of a first-round quarterback. I know it's October 1st. I'm just telling you, Ran, that's the road we're going down, and I don't even think we're overreacting when we do it.
Nah, and it's so funny. If I could, I always take my notes, right? I don't know if you could see that.
I see that.
The only note I have down for Dante Moore is so calm and poised. That's the only note I have down. I was watching that game, and I like to look into the eyes of the player when they're on the field and in those pressure field moments. Like, do you see a glimmer of doubt in their eyes? Do you see some hesitancy when they're out there? And this young man just looked so calm, so poised, so under control, and just in the moment from play 1 to play 75. And his face was the same.
That's right.
And it's one of Joe Burrow has the unique skill set or ability, I don't know quite how to categorize it, to his blood pressure literally does not rise, whether it's a pressure filled moment or he's tying his shoe on the sideline. Like he stays the same. And I really believe Dante Moore has that same attribute where he doesn't get here, he's just here.
Yep.
And he's one of those guys where you can look on his face and just tell what his personality is, because he is about his business. He's buttoned up, and I can tell that he's very regimented and he's very meticulous. And it's just, he was, again, so calm, so poised, and was just always in control. Because no shade, Striker. The Penn State fans were loud early, but then they were also quiet early, because it got to a point, probably midway through the first quarter. I mean, they had moments if it was third down or after a big play or whatever, what have you. But Dante Moore and Oregon, they didn't hear a loud Penn State crowd for the whole day now. You know what I mean? So shout out to Dante Moore. He's gonna have a tough decision at the end of the season. He's gonna have a really tough decision.
It may not be tough.
Like I said, we're gonna see how deep Uncle Phil's pockets are to get him to come back. Is he gonna open up that Nike warehouse back there and just tell him, I'm gonna close my eyes and let you run through and grab whatever you want? Well, it don't even matter. These kids now probably already have stock in damn Apple and all of that. But yeah, man, it's different.
There you go. That's as effusive as you've been this early in the season about any prospect. I mentioned it when we talked about it last time. Offensive coordinator Will Stein cannot say enough good things about Dante Moore, the person and the player, and it just keeps manifesting itself every single Saturday. And look, he'll probably have a bad game at some point, and we'll go from there. But the blood pressure thing is feels real in that when we talk about the next quarterback, if he was hooked up to a blood pressure cuff, he would have broke the machine at Walgreens. Because let's start here. Producer Striker, give us your producer Striker opinion on Drew Allar, quarterback at Penn State. I'm just curious what you think.
I think he obviously didn't play as well as what people expected coming into the year. But if you look at the play calling as the game went, in the fourth quarter, they really opened it up and turned it into actually his style of game, where I think the first 3 quarters, it was more triple option, like RPO type stuff, where he wasn't airing it out. But end of the game, they looked unstoppable the final 2 drives, a regulation and offense. But overall, I can't be too happy with the performance.
So let me ask you that, Ran. What does it tell you as an evaluator when the OC is not allowing his quarterback to open it up in the first 3 quarters?
I mean, that just kind of is what it is. It tells me that they don't trust him, and that they don't think that he has the ability to lift that program. If you go back to what we talked about very early during our summer scouting series when we were talking about the running backs, we both said that if Penn State did things right, they would just turn around and hand the ball off to those 2 tanks in the backfield,
right,
and lean heavily on those guys. And I went and I looked. Drew Allar only has one game so far this year, and I know we've only played 4 games, whatever it is, but he has one game where he has over 60% completion percentage. And that was against Nevada. He completed 84% of his passes. The rest of the way, he completed 57.6% against FIU, 55.2 against Villanova, and 56 against Oregon. That's a problem.
You know what? It reminds me of, you mentioned Bill Parcells all the time. Your dad played for Bill. It reminds me when Bill says, "You are what your record says you are." So we try to, and look, I don't want to take any shots at Drew because you talked about that. I think this is important to remember. You said you made this point. When these kids come in from the game, the first thing they do is turn their phones on. And I'm not trying to make him feel bad about himself. I'm just talking about if we're evaluating him as a quarterback that you want to take with a top 15 pick, you have a lot of questions. And you are what your record says you are. And especially the stark contrast between the way he played in terms of early in the game, as Stryker pointed out, that touchdown throw, play action, turn around, throw the post. Let's see more of that. The other stuff with the sporadic decision-making, he just feels so sped up when compared to Dante Moore, who feels like he's just going for a walk in the park. That also leaves a lasting image in your mind, fair or not. But you got to figure out who this guy is. And we still don't know through a season and a half whether he can be the dude to lead an NFL team.
Well, no, you know.
Okay, that's probably
right. You just holding out hope because
right.
of the hype, but
Okay,
and that's where you have to trust it. You can't force it. I mean, look, he's going on his 3rd year as a starter, right, at Penn State. And if we're saying we don't know, the fact that we don't know for a guy that's in his 3rd year as a starter lets you know that
Yeah,
you just
that's
don't
right.
you just don't want to believe what you see.
Hey, let me ask you this: when you're having these draft meeting conversations, and someone like me speaks up, is the pushback unanimous from your perspective, or are there people that'll try to talk themselves into traits, even though the above the neck stuff doesn't appear to be there yet?
No, there are a ton of scouts that are big traits guys, right? Because those are the ones you don't want to miss on, because we in the media will build up the guy who goes to the combine that measures in at 6'4", 225. He ran 4.32. Then everybody, oh my God, this guy's he's shooting up draft boards.
Right.
And then now the scouts are trying to, CYA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're trying to cover your ass and make sure that you have something where you go back and you look at the guy's numbers and the guy hadn't produced. He doesn't have the production, doesn't match those measurables, but they still have these guys graded up because you don't want to be the one to miss on the guy just in case he hits. But what I like to set the scene in the draft meetings is you allow the area scout who has that area. So whoever is the Northeast scout, he's going to lead the discussion on Drew Allar. And then from there, the regional scout who has, the East Regional or East National, whatever you title that person as, will then speak up. Then the college director, right? And then if you have the coaches in the meetings, your quarterback coach will speak, the offensive coordinator will speak. And then there's usually a cross-checker who cross-checks the position. That person will speak. So you create the conversation amongst those guys. What I didn't like, there would be a time, there are certain few guys where I'll speak up, but what I've learned is typically when the quote-unquote decision maker, whether it's the GM, the head coach, when they speak up and they talk about a player, whether they like them or don't like them, then the rest of the room is kind of scared to speak their opinion. So what I do is I'll allow them to drive the conversation, and I'll interject questions in there to kind of further the question along, the conversation along, or I'll create a separate scenario. So in a Drew Allar type case where you said, we still don't know, then what I would do is I would turn around and challenge you on a player from a previous year that was in the same situation. Like, hey, how do you feel about, let's make up a person, John Smith. How did you feel about him? Are you still questioning whether he or were you completing your thought that this guy didn't have it?
Right. And
then that'll make them kind of look at it different. And you have certain scouts that they'll just stand firm. Like, no, I think this guy's a guy. He's just a product of this, and this. And I appreciate those guys. So I'm like, all right, cool, thanks. And initially I allow the scouts in the room to stack the board and have, put the initial, all right, so where we're going to put Drew Allar? Okay, we're going to put him here. Then boom, you put him up there on the board. But I came into every draft meeting with my draft board that I've done based off of how I've watched them. But then there's also that final draft meeting where it's myself, it's the head coach, it's, your top two lieutenants, your assistant GM or your personnel director, college director, and we'll go in there and set the final board based off of how we see it. But you always want to give the scouts the voice to be able to talk about these guys.
Well, that's a great little segue, Ran. And thanks for those insights as well. Because we're going to take a break. When I come back, I'm going to set my QB draft board without you knowing about it. And I'm going to get your thoughts on it. And we'll talk about it after this break.
Saturday kicks off at noon, and it's big time. First, Air Force and Navy face off in Annapolis. Then it's big time at the Rose Bowl when UCLA hosts Penn State.
All right, Rand, you have no knowledge of what my quarterback draft board looks like through 5 weeks of the college football season. We've talked about many of these players, and we'll talk about a few more that haven't yet, that are on this list that we haven't gotten to. But all right, the big unveil, producer Striker, let's see what we got here. So this is Rand's real reaction, real time. And if you're listening, I'll read it to you. Number one on my QB big board, the draft for today, this is how these quarterbacks come off the board. If I were making picks for all 32 teams, Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. Number 2, Dante Moore out of Oregon. Number 3, Garrett Nussmeyer, LSU. Number 4, John McTeer out of Oklahoma. Number 5, Ty Simpson out of Alabama. So let's go with the top 5 there. Give me your first your initial thoughts on that top 5.
Yeah, I'm not arguing you there. I think as much as I love John McTeer and I had him, how much I loved him, this summer. I want to see him, how he's going to return off of this broken hand.
Yep.
And for him, he is going to be system specific.
Yep.
In his style of play. But yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm looking at your list and I'm like, okay, yeah, yep. And then it's when I get to let's say 11 down, that's where I'm like, ooh, that's the spicy part.
Let's get saucy then. So in case you're listening, just so you have an idea what we're talking about here. At number 6, Jayden Maiava, USC. Carson Beck, number 7 out of Miami. Josh Hoover, we talked about him out of TCU. He's had a good season thus far. Number 8. Number 9, Lenore Sellers out of South Carolina, and we're talking a lot of upside. No Arch Quavius on this list, and I thought about leaving Lenore's off as well because I would love for them both to come back to school, but that is not my decision. Number 10, Nico Iamaleava. So Drew Allar versus Iamaleava this weekend in L.A., and we'll probably talk about Nico next week. We haven't talked about him yet, and he's sort of been out of sight, out of mind because that UCLA program is in disarray. Number 11, Sawyer Robertson out of Baylor. Number 12, Taylor Green out of Arkansas. We'll talk about both those guys. 13 and 14, Cade Klubnik, Clemson, Drew Allar, Penn State. So let's start at the bottom, man. How do you feel about Cade Klubnik and Drew Allar bringing up the rear at 13 and 14?
So I'm going back and pulling up my summer rankings, right? And
hey, let me brag on myself real quick while you do that. My preseason big board, I had Cade Klubnik 52 and Lenore 60, and not being disrespectful, just because I thought there was a lot of hurdles to overcome where those guys were getting top 10 buzz, and I just wanted to wait and see what happened. Now, maybe they end up going number 1 and number 2 overall, but I feel okay with how I had them in August based on what we've seen thus far.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at my rankings from the summer, and Dante Moore wasn't on there. We didn't watch him or talk about him. Ty Simpson wasn't on there. Didn't watch him or talk about him. Jayden Maiava, same. Josh Hoover, same. And Luke Altmaier, I want to say, was not.
No, we didn't talk about him either. Out of Illinois, that's right.
Didn't talk about him. So one guy here who's taken a big drop from my list, who I had at number 5, but I'll just go through my summer rankings.
Yep.
I had quarterback formerly known as 1, Nussmeier 2, Allar 3 with an arrow going down, Mendoza 4 with an arrow up. Sam Levitt from Arizona State is the big missing one. Nico was 6, Lenore Sellers 8, Mateer. Lenore Sellers was 7, Mateer was 8 with an arrow up. Cade Klubnik was 9 with arrows going sideways, kind of like indifferent.
Right.
Then Carson Beck, Malik Murphy from Oregon State was 11. Sawyer Robinson was 12, and Taylor Green was 13. Yeah. So I'm the reason why it really caught my eye is because from the summer through so far through the fall, Sawyer Robinson and Taylor Green are still grouped together.
Yeah. Completely different players, but in terms of stacking this position. And the thing about Sam Levitt, I'll give him credit. He played maybe his best game last week, and I think they beat Baylor. I think they beat Sawyer Robertson and Baylor, to double check, but I went back and watched his throws, and he finally looked like the Sam Levitt we thought we were going to get over the summer in terms of taking the next step. But yeah, he's had some rough patches early on. We talked about him a few weeks ago for sure. Of the players on my list 1 through 12, would you take Cade Klubnik or Drew Allar above any of those names?
I personally would put Cade Klubnik and Drew above Sawyer Robinson and Taylor Green.
Okay, so you literally move them up 2 spots each. So you're not making leaps for either player.
Yeah, to me, when you get to this part, right? When you get out of let's say the top 10, 11 through 15 is your personal preference.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not going to sit here and, what the hell, Ryan? You think Cade Klubnik is?
You don't know how the internet works.
It's personal preference. But yeah, man, like this is cool to see, and especially see it in real time. Because now what this is going to force me to do is watch this.
You like the kids filming Harry Mack when he calls him on Home Eagle. That's a deep cut there. If you get that one.
So I'm gonna, because now what I really want to do now for myself personally is do a deeper dive into 5 to 8 is where I really want to do. Probably go 4 to 8 is where I want to really do a deeper dive, and probably could exclude Carson Beck to a degree. But I want to do a deeper dive there. The Lenore Sellers train for me is it's a tougher one.
I'm with you.
I don't know that he'll actually come back.
Okay, interesting.
right? Because I felt Anthony Richardson should have came back.
Yeah. Did people
You
around
know.
him encourage him to do that, or were they telling him the opposite?
It depends because there were two different factions around
Yeah.
him. But I think from an agent perspective, they were looking at it from the standpoint, and they were right that he was going to be that class as Trey Lance,
He went top
where
5. That's right.
you just have that 1 year, you come in with all this hype, and you have ability, and it has everyone's attention, and so that's why I'll continue to stand firm on Lenoris Sellers. My comp for him is Anthony Richardson. I do think he's a little bit further along as a passer than Anthony Richardson
Yeah.
at the
Played a little
same
more ball.
stage. But I will say that in my opinion, and I'm just going with my brain, he's going to deal with the gift and the curse of the Anthony Richardson comp. That's where I'm struggling.
We're in lockstep on that because I talked to scouts that's the first name they mention. And it goes back to the previous conversation where I said, I've been talking about Drew Allar. You said, well, we sort of know. I don't think we know. The book has not been written on Lenoris, but there's a lot of room for growth on the football field that you want to see from a franchise quarterback. And, sometimes guys get pushed in one direction and perhaps make decisions they wouldn't have made.
Here's the other thing, and I don't want to belabor the point, but with Lenoris Sellers, right, from a development standpoint, how much of it is actually on him to be able to go and visit with, all the quarterback gurus, that are out there on his own in the summer? Because maybe with the style of play that South Carolina plays is not conducive for him to be this drop back passer, this fundamentally sound, thing. Because and we have to remember that, and I kill him more than anybody for it, but I also understand it that it's not these college coaches' job to get their players ready for the NFL.
Right.
It's their job to win college football games. Now, through the course of that, you like for them to develop and make these young men better, but that's not their driving force. They got to win games on Saturday, and so I don't know. I'll just leave it at that with Lenoris Sellers. I don't know.
There's a lot to sort through for sure. And next week we'll probably talk Nico Maiava. We'll see how that game goes. And I have a handful of other quarterbacks I want to get to in the next few weeks because there are so many dudes out there spinning it. Sorsby out of Cincinnati's another one. Our guy Emory Hunt sent me the Monmouth quarterback. I'm going to check him out. So we'll have a few more names to get to before we start getting this list where it needs to be. But maybe a month from now, I'll surprise you with another list and we can see where we are and how much it's changed. All right, let's talk about some of these non-QBs that balled out in week 5 of the college football season. I'm laughing because before we get to the quarterbacks, Rand's going to be out of pocket with this one. He's going with Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. And you feel free to give the backstory if you want, or if you want people just to Google it on their own and you want to spice it up, that's your call, my man.
What are you talking about? I put Lane Kiffin down because he is the play caller, and they had 480.
Has a picture of Lane taking a photograph before the game with his daughter, who, according to reports, I think the reports are coming from her. She admitted it. She's dating LSU linebacker Whit Weeks.
See, I didn't even know that. I had him down because Ole Miss had 480 yards of total offense against a crazy good LSU defense. No, I'm being petty. I'm being messy. I'm here for the shenanigans and the tomfoolery. Hey, listen, anytime a young man jumps out the week of a game against an opponent and you drop the head, you want to make your quote unquote formal announcement of your relationship with the head coach's daughter, young man, you know what the hell you were doing.
Right.
You were trying to be cute and be mad disrespectful. And Lane came out there and had his team ready and put it on you. And not only did he put it on you, he came with the funk after the game. And because in the post-game on-field interview, he said, I'm looking for Whit to make sure that we covered the over. And so I'm here because, hey, listen, it doesn't get any pettier than Lane. You say something bad about Lane, Lane is going to respond. And so shout out to you, Lane, for putting that young man on notice. He's going to be your potential son-in-law. And right now you got a dub over him that you can Hey, I would imagine right now Lane's daughter has one of those tags on her car that says "House Divided" with the half LSU, half Ole Miss. But here's what I want to say to you, young lady. I know Whit is your boyfriend. No disrespect, cool, but please remember that Mr. and Mrs. Lane Kiffin pay your tuition, sweetheart. So always lean towards that side. I'm sure Whit is getting crazy bread with NIL and could probably pay your tuition, but until he puts a ring on it, your last name is Kiffin. Ride with the home team. So shout out to you, Lane, for getting that dub. Hope to see you
Previous
soon.
point, Lane. Good luck finding someone who will keep receipts longer than Lane will. And when he gets
My kind of guy.
he's your kind of guy. Yeah, back in week 1, you're talking about how petty Aaron Rodgers was when he called out the Jets when he beat them. Aaron Rodgers looks up to Lane Kiffin when it comes to being petty, is what I'm trying to say.
Hey man,
Lane does it with a smile on his face.
I'm here for it because you know what that tells me about a dude like him. He don't duck the smoke. And sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. And however it ends up, but it wasn't because he was ducking it.
Look, my man got left on the tarmac by Nick Saban. Didn't work out that time. It feels like every time since it's worked out pretty good for Lane.
Listen, Lane Kiffin has had like 12 head coaching jobs. Life is great.
He's doing okay.
Life is great. He has that level of money that we all attain to, and you know that level that I'm speaking of.
I've heard tell of it. I have not experienced it personally, but you tell me how it goes. I appreciate that. All right, let's keep it going with the Ran list here. Now let's turn to football players after you got your pettiness out of you. This is a young man we talked about during summer scouting. I like Le'Veon Moss, the running back out of Texas A&M, a lot. And he finally had a big game this week against Auburn. Went for 141 on 22 carries, had a touchdown. I will say this is interesting. You can tell me whether you think this is a function of the offense or just a function of what Moss is capable of. They do not target him at all in the pass game. He's a running back. That's his title. And I think he's a between the tackles guy. He runs hard, and he'll run through arm tackles and all that. He will protect his quarterback in pass protection. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities, but that he will get after it with. But just in terms of the lack of receptions, is that more a let's go back and see what the offense was like and talk to coaches, or is that something that would concern you when you go through the draft process?
Well, what I've learned with a lot of these running backs coming out, you're either going to see them with the ball in their hands or nothing, right? Because a lot of these guys come out not being good in pass protection because they're not asked to do it.
Right.
And typically, if you're the primary ball carrier on third down, you're not involved in the passing game. That's your down off. That's your down off to get a breather. And so that could be why. Now, I do know when Devin A-Chain was at A&M, they used him in the passing game, right? Because that fit his skill set. So for me, from a scouting perspective, that would be one where you talk to the coaches about, hey, man, you guys didn't target him much. Is that, due to you guys believing he can't catch? Or is it just not a product of him not being involved in the passing game and just your offensive structure? So then I would reach out to my Southwest scout and say, hey, when you go into A&M, could you specifically go watch the running back drills and see how he catches? Because a lot of times you can tell just when they're catching passes, the way they try to frame it or the way they, frame their hands, where like, okay, this guy doesn't have hands.
It's interesting you say that because I remember Kenneth Walker coming out of Wake Forest, transferred to Michigan State, and talking to scouts. They had to go back and watch the Wake Forest practice film because there was no clear indication that Michigan State, I believe, I could have it reversed. But the point was they had to go back because he wasn't targeted a lot in games to be a receiver. Ended up being a second-round pick, and he's having a pretty good year thus far. All right, next up, I mentioned the USC-Illinois game earlier when we talked about Jayden Maiava. The edge rusher, number 17 for Illinois, Gabe Jacas, I believe is how he pronounced his last name, Jacas. He's a built dude. Like he's a little stiff at times, I think. But I love the way that he got after it, the high motor with which he played. Plays with heavy hands. And I mean, when he puts his hands on you, you are re-anchoring, and you might outweigh him as an offensive tackle by 30, 40 pounds. And then his ability to sort of swipe hands down, get the offensive tackle off balance and turn the corner. That showed up consistently in this USC game. Talk about a high motor. He plays with that. He'll run sideline to sideline to run down balls. Incredibly disruptive. I thought he was a little better as a pass rusher than against the run, which sometimes is curious when you see a guy who can sort of force re-anchors, not quite as good as setting the edge and sort of guessing as a run blocker, or excuse me, against versus the run. But he's an interesting prospect. I'm glad I got a chance to watch him because I'd heard some buzz about him over the last few weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, you described it perfectly. Typically, guys like this who are a little tighter, a little more straight line, if you will, like they have some heaviness to them, some physicality to them, and they just play extremely hard. And it's particularly good to see Gabe performing the way he's performing because he's a Florida boy. He's from Port St. Lucie.
There you go.
And so I'm not going to say a ton of guys come out of there, but not a ton of guys come out of there. And for him to make it Illinois kind of says a lot about him and who he is. But it's like you said, man, he's a hard charger, plays with his hair on fire, which is all you could really hope and want out of these guys. What does he have on the season? Like 4 sacks, 4.5
Yeah, double
sacks?
check, but he's getting after it.
Something like that. I think he's registered a sack or at least a half a sack in almost every game so far this season. So keep it up, young fellow.
All right, next up, this is a guy that I can speak highly enough of. I think you agreed with me. Alabama left tackle Kadyn Proctor coming into the season. And he hit some rough patches over the first month. I thought one of his best games was against Georgia. You and I were laughing at the screen pass they threw to him. And I pray for whoever had to try to tackle him. Some DB for Georgia had to come try to go low on him. That's the Derrick Henry situation. There he is if you're watching with him and the ball in his hands. And number 3, C.J. Allen.
His arms are. His arms are bigger than most people's legs.
It looks like his arms are bigger than his legs. And they're both enormous. Like, that's how big Kadyn Proctor is. But you said something interesting to me. Because he's an insane athlete. So when you see him, his footwork looks a little sporadic in his pass sets. He's taken some bad angles in his pass sets, and I'm not a pass rush or an offensive line pass set guru, but if I'm like, okay, this appears to be problematic in terms of his ability to keep his balance, when you couple that with the athleticism that he has, and you were pointing out to me during the broadcast, they talked about he went on a 9-week diet to get down to 359. And I said, that's DeJuan Jones territory, and that's not where you want to be. All that taken together, how do you feel about Kadyn Proctor now that we're 5 weeks into this thing?
Well, that's gonna be the problem that's gonna carry throughout this draft process. And they're gonna talk about it on draft night when he is drafted, is the work ethic and the discipline part of it. Like I said, the telecast said he went on a 9-week program to lose weight, and he got down to 359, which in my eyes, and having experience with it, I would imagine that he was about 380-ish, the low end of 380-ish, which, I mean, you're going into a year where most people have you as the number 1 offensive tackle prospect, and still have concerns about the consistency of the play. Because everyone knows you're athletic and you have all these traits, but then you come into a really big year for yourself overweight. To me, that screams a lack of discipline. And so that would be my main concern. And trust me, from a talent standpoint, I think he's one of the top 5 players in this draft class from a talent standpoint.
Right.
But you talk about the lack of discipline with the weight, and then even some stuff going back to, him going into the portal, committing to go to one team, and then ultimately decide to come back. Like, there's just going to be some maturity questions there that he's going to have to answer. So the question you ask is going to be the question that's going to, what's today's date? October 1st?
October 1st, baby.
We'll be asking the same question February 1st. We'll be asking it March 1st, April 1st, up until he's drafted. But I felt like the screen pass they threw him was his reward for getting his weight down.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of that Robert Hunt play. Robert Hunt, when he was with the Dolphins, when he just, as an offensive lineman getting out front on the screen, he just turned around and just plucked the ball effortless. and actually scoring on it. Now it was illegal touching.
He didn't care.
but he didn't care. He got his, but they looked the same. Two big men out there rumbling.
You mentioned the potential maturity questions. He just turned 20 this summer, Kadyn Proctor did. So he is 3 months into being 20 years old. I don't imagine there's any discussion about him returning to school. And within his group, and this should be speculating, that wouldn't be the worst thing, but I don't know. Like, that's not obviously not my decision to make. So being 20, what does that do for you?
I mean, it kind of answers a little bit of the questions and shows that whoever takes him, you got to have a plan. You got to have people in your building that are going to be able to reach him and get him on a structured plan. You're going to have to surround him with the right type of people in the locker room, because he's 20 years old. He'll be turning 21 at some point during his rookie year or just before his rookie year. And so you just got to understand what you have. Now, I personally think he should come out, because I don't think him going back to college is going to prove anything.
Yeah.
Right. He's going to go back to college and prove that he can get his weight down. Like, that's not going to make much of a difference.
Right.
In my opinion, because what's going to happen is he's going to go train at one of these elite facilities for the draft, and he's going to get his weight down to, he'll probably get down to 350, 355. And then, you know what that's going to do? Lead to more questions like, why couldn't you do that at school?
Yeah, right.
Right. And so, but then it's going to be, okay, you're 350 now at the combine. Let's see what he weighs at pro day.
Because we've seen situations where offensive linemen, they gain 9 pounds between combine and pro day, and then you have more questions.
Yeah, and then, or you could pull a DeJuan Jones who didn't weigh in at his pro day.
Let me ask you, were you at that pro day?
Yeah.
I was at that pro day, and I had not been to a bunch of pro days, but as our buddy Rick Spielman explained to me later, he had never in his 30 years, and you can correct me if he's wrong, in his 30 years of being in the NFL, had heard a player say, I am not going to weigh in at the pro day. And then everyone was laughing, which is wild to me. I was like, oh my gosh, they're laughing at this kid for not doing something as simple as stepping on a scale. And we later found out, everyone assumed that he weighed 400 pounds. So we later found out that he weighed 380 or whatever it was. Just get on the scale. He got bad advice from his agent. But had you ever seen a player refuse, like they refuse to run because they have hammy or whatever, or, whatever. They don't bench press at the combine. But had you ever seen a situation where a player refused to get on a scale at a pro day?
Not that I could remember, but here's the difference, because I think Rick and I, we came up in the same area. Obviously, Rick before me, but times have changed, right? Yep. We are in the player empowerment phase of football, which is what most purists hate, and these kids understand the power that they have, right? So in our era, or when I came out, like, there was no way in hell I wasn't gonna weigh in or do my height. Right. Like, and I'll give you an example, and this is just keeping it a buck. I was a straight line runner, right? My change of direction was average. I was stiff that way, but I could run in a straight line. So I knew running a 40, all that stuff. But I also knew at what I was weighing while I was training, I needed to be heavier. So around the time, I may have been 215 at the most.
Oh,
with the way I was training, because I was training 2-3 times a day, just making sure I was in shape and all of that. So when I got to the combine, I did what we call the water trick, because back then you weighed one day and you worked out the next day. So the morning of weigh-ins, I got up and just chugged a gallon of water and drank water all the way up until I got on the stage to weigh in, and I weighed in at 224. And so,
you know what a gallon of water weighs, by the way?
You say that again?
You know how much a gallon of water weighs? This is the stuff I'm useful for.
How much?
I think 7 pounds.
So there you go. So I weighed 224 when I weighed in, but then the next day when I ran, I was 214. And I ran 4.4 or whatever it was I ran. But then at my pro day, I was 212. You know what I mean? And so, but it was one of those. You couldn't cheat
it either, because you do the same day.
You couldn't cheat it.
Right.
You couldn't cheat it. And so these kids now, man, they know, like, I mean, okay, you're not gonna you're not going to draft me because I didn't weigh in. And I had a conversation with DeJuan while the other guys, because it was Paris Johnson was working out and
Luke
I
Whippler.
forget. Yeah. And I pulled him to the side, and me and him have a conversation, which I'll keep between me and him. But he felt it. I'll say it that way. He felt it. And not so much that people were laughing at him, but he felt the guilt of not weighing in.
And they weren't laughing at him. They were laughing at the idea that you wouldn't even step on a scale. Yeah.
And so what I ended up telling him was like, hey, man, you need to take this as an opportunity to, from this day, get your ish together.
Right.
Because I said, what's going to happen? I said, all these teams that are here to see you, they're now going to bring you in on a 30 visit. And guess what they're going to ask you to do when you get in the building? They're going to ask you to get on the scale.
Right.
And so I knew leaving the pro day how much he weighed. And I knew it wasn't 400 just because of my conversation with him. And he told me flat out, he was like, yeah, man, I'm too heavy right now.
Oh, he still thought that was too heavy, whatever it was, 380.
Whatever. Yeah. He was like, I'm too heavy right now. And
I
that's
don't know
why
he plays that now. So I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the whole breakdown of all of that.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Thank you for that peek, because I remember thinking, again, that was like the first or second or third pro day I'd been to. And it seemed odd to me that folks would be surprised that he wouldn't weigh in. And then it seemed, that wasn't typical. But your larger point that this is a different day and age than it was.
I'll tell you that if you remember last year at the Miami Pro Day, Cam Ward didn't weigh in.
And that was a talking point. That's right.
Ward didn't weigh in.
And Cam, unlike DeJuan to a degree, had way more leverage. Like he could dictate what he was.
Cam knew coming into the pro day that he was likely going to be the number one pick, whether the Titans stayed in the pick or someone traded up in the pick.
Right.
He probably had a good gauge that he was going to be the number one pick.
Yeah.
And so I remember one scout in particular who I won't name, came with the empty threats of, hey, if you don't weigh in, we're not going to let you work out. Okay. And I just remember looking at that scout like, you're in Cam's home. You know what I mean? Like, This is the University of Miami facility. You don't get to dictate who works out and who doesn't.
I love you saying all that stuff and refusing to put on your Miami lanyard.
Hey, I didn't go there. Hey, listen, hey, excuse me, sir. Can we see your up right here? There you go. Thank you. There was no rules that said I had to wear it around my neck.
That in his back pocket so he could sit on it. All right. That was a nice little aside there. Next up, this young man has been on my radar for a while. I watched him earlier in the fall. Went back and watched him again after they beat the brakes off of Akron over the weekend. Safety, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. And my dude will blow you up. And he's a pretty good athlete in space. He plays deep third. They'll bring him into the box where he plays a lot as well, or deep half, I should say, usually in two high situations, but they bring him into the box. And this is the line I'll read from my notes that pretty much says it all. A tone setter and an enforcer with a nose for the ball, always looking to blow something up. He shows good range from center field, and he drives on deep curls is what I wrote. So middle of the field, intermediate throws. Got one for a pick six, and plays with pretty good range. And I love his mental approach to playing a safety position wherever they line him up. This young man's going to get drafted. The only question is how high, and I'm sure that'll have something to do with the testing. But Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, safety out of Toledo. I'm glad we got a chance to finally talk about him.
Yeah, I gotta go back and watch this guy. He's a Tampa kid, so he's got a notch up already, being a Florida boy. So
that's the first thing you look up where they grew up.
Hey man, because it means something. For me, it tells me what type of mentality they have. When you come from certain places, ball is life. And so that kind of lets you know a little bit into their wiring. And then especially if you know the area and you could kind of pinpoint where they went to high school, then to me, it kind of, when you're watching the tape, you could see a lot of why the mentality is what it is.
All right. No, put a pin in old Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Let me know what you think about him. But I want to give him a shout out because he's had a really good season thus far. And he could find his way to day two and might do it pretty easily. Next up, Florida State wide receiver Duce Robinson. This team messed around and lost to UVA after beating Alabama week 1. So you make sense of that. I can't do it. Duce Robinson is enormous. plays out wide primarily most of the time. Oh, Laura, producer striker showing the last play in overtime against UVA. This guy catches everything. He's had one drop on the season. He bobbled this ball in the back of the end zone in overtime, and it looked like he got his feet down, depending on whether you ask Florida State fans or not. UVA fans will tell you otherwise, and he just double caught this ball, and they ruled it out after review, and it cost him that football game. But he has an enormous catch radius. He is a contested catch, high point machine. He's a straight line guy. He's not particularly wiggly, but he's also enormous. You don't expect him to be. And when I think about Florida State big receivers in recent years, Johnny Wilson comes to mind. I think Duce is head and tails a better player at the wide receiver position than Johnny Wilson is, who's now with the Eagles. At least he was last time I checked. I love this guy, and he's a different type dude than the sort of Aaron Andersons that we've talked about at LSU, or even the Mekhi Lemons that we talked about last week out of USC. He's an outside guy, big catch guy, not as fast as Ted McMillan, but thicker. And I think he's more of a contested catch guy in that sense. And I think he has some long speed. He can outrun dudes down the field. He's just not gonna. He's a Derrick Henry 5-step guy, if you will, at the wide receiver position. He ain't gonna beat you off the snap. Did you get a chance to watch Duce?
Yeah. Like you said, my number one note I wrote down was like, I love his size. I think they have him listed as 6'6", 220, which probably means he's about, 6'0", 5'3", 6'0", 5'4", and he probably is about anywhere from 218 to 220.
He looks
So
pretty
you
rocked up.
love the size, big yards per catch average that stretches all the way back to 2023, averaged almost 22 yards a catch then. 17 yards a catch last year, and I think he's 20 yards a catch this year. So that's a 19 and a half yards a catch average on his career. My issue with him this year is the bad game, good game, bad game, good game. Like, I want to see some form of consistency there on a week-to-week basis, just in terms of his productivity, because a guy like this size and having the catch radius that he does and playing, on the edge, like, he should give you more consistency. Like Johnny Wilson that you were speaking of, Johnny Wilson was more consistent.
You thought so? Interesting.
No, I'm saying on a week-to-week basis.
Oh, gotcha.
In terms of production, Keon Coleman in his 1 year at Florida State was more consistent from a production standpoint. I personally thought Johnny Wilson coming out would have been better making a transition to F tight end than being a pure receiver on the outside. I just don't know if his pride, factored in, and he necessarily didn't want to make the move. But I personally thought that had he embraced moving to tight end, he could have been a mismatch problem for linebackers and safeties, playing that F tight end type role. So I think the arrow for me with Duce right now is, I love the traits. I will say that I love the traits, but it's kind of that, one this way, one that way. Right. Because I'm big on consistency. I'll just say it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way, time and time again, with one-year wonders. And I'm not talking about Duce, but always Jalen Hyde always come back to. I was like, oh, he's going to ball out. Well, why didn't he produce before Tennessee? And then we're yet to see it show up in the NFL. All right, let's take a quick break here, and then we'll rip through these NFL rookies who had big weeks, and then we'll wrap things up right after this.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Rand, before we get out of here, let's talk about some of these rookies. We'll group Jaxson Dart and Cam Ward together. Go back and watch their throws. This was Jackson's first game, and if we're comparing how he played to how Cam Ward played, Cam continues to remain calm in the pocket. And sometimes I'll watch the throws and I'll go back and watch the throws and sort of what's the way to put it? Like my eyes will sort of glaze over, and I just want to watch the quarterback's motion. And with Cam, it's 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3, second read out. There's not a lot of hero ball that we were concerned about, even as they continue to struggle offensively. And he had some comments after the game where he wants to see some improvement with everyone, himself included. But he's doing the things you want him to do. He did have an interception on a ball where he just missed Omarion in a little scramble drill. But I remain hopeful and impressed with the way Cam's playing under some situations where the offensive line has struggled and the playmakers at the wide receiver position don't consistently get open. Jaxson Dart, meanwhile, we talked about him on Monday's podcast. A little frenetic, but again, it's his first start. Gets a good defense, ran the ball well, scored a touchdown, had a little shovel pass for another touchdown, and that's something you can build on a schedule that's going to be difficult for him. What were your thoughts about these two rookies, one making his first start?
Yeah, so, speaking on Jaxson Dart, we've talked about it a lot on all the different platforms on CBS Sports HQ that we've been on. They got the win. That's all that matters, right? They got the win. He didn't turn the ball over. But where Jaxson Dart is going to have, it felt like their offense, again, the tempo felt like it was up from when Russell Wilson was in there. Yeah. And so I felt like Jaxson Dart, they kept it simple for him. It was 1-2 run, 1-2 run, 1-2 run. And then they mixed in a couple design runs there. But the big thing for him that he's going to have to learn, and I'm sure whether it was Mike Kafka or Brian Daboll or whomever the case may be, like he's got to learn to get down and slide or get out of bounds and not take these hits. Because guys, if they know that you're going to pull the ball down and run with it and they get an opportunity to take a shot at you, they're going to take their shots.
Right.
And sometimes, depending on who these coordinators are or who the head coaches are, they're cool with you getting 15 yards to send a message.
That's right.
And so you just don't want that message to be sent on your starting quarterback. So along with growing as a quarterback in the National Football League, he's just got to learn how to protect himself. But you love the energy that he brought. He's going to have to, like you said, he's going to have to calm things down a little bit from the pocket and rushing through. I felt like some of his dropbacks, he was rushing through the read, and he has to understand that there are second windows that come open as you go through your progression. So those are just little things he's going to have to learn. And, for Cam, he's just going to have to continue to grit it out and just grind it out. It was his first game with a new play caller, Bo Hardegree. And so that, again, Bo called plays, I think last year or the year before when the Raiders transitioned from Josh McDaniels to Antonio Pierce as the interim head coach. And so Bo had a whole year where he didn't call plays. And so now to have to go back and work through it. And again, you're still working through Brian Callahan's system. So it wasn't like it was a new offense, but now Bo has to work his way through calling plays. I think you'll see them play a little bit better offensively this week, just in terms of Bo finding a groove, being able to call plays for Cam. And you have to remember this too. Bo Hardegree was Cam's quarterback coach prior to, him taking over play calling duties. So they have a little bit of a bond, I would say, from the standpoint of, I'll say a comfort level of Cam being able to go to Bo saying, hey, Bo, this is what I like.
Right.
And Bo having a good sense of what Cam likes and what he does well. So he's just going to have to continue to grind it out and grit it out. And at some point, they're going to get their first win. And we all know that the winning is the cure-all. And at least for a week, it'll make everything feel better, and it give you a little bit of energy moving forward.
And I will say this, I've not seen on the field Cam dropping his head or showing frustration. He just goes to the next play and he keeps spinning it, and that's all you can do. All right, let's end on a positive note here. Let's talk about some young fellas of the week. I'll let you go first. Talking about baby Jesus' position, the running back position. Who you got?
Man, for me, I'm gonna talk about Omarion Hampton, young running back out of the Chargers. Had 12 carries, 128 yards, and a touchdown. I also had 5 catches out of the backfield. He has 14 catches on the season, and he really has stepped into this role. Now that the other running back, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Najee.
Right now. Najee Harris is out for the year with the torn Achilles, and so he's really jumped on. I mean, to finish a game as an NFL back, averaging 10 yards a carry, kind of lets you know the type of game he was. So, in a losing effort, Omarion Hampton, you are my young fella of the week.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go from one first-round running back to the other first-round running back, and Ashton Jeanty, who finally played like Ashton Jeanty we were expecting to see when he was drafted.
You want to know why?
Why? Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you. You think it's that?
It's comfort level, man. He went back to his original stance.
So his original stance is like he's standing in line at the grocery store, pre-snap, sidecar to the quarterback. First time, and Chip Kelly talked about this during preseason, how that's not an athletic stance, and they weren't necessarily leaning towards Ashton doing that. And he sputtered over the first month of the season, and then against Chicago, ran for 131 and a touchdown, including a 64-yard ball run he ripped off. He was running through arm tackles all day. Had 2 catches for 17 yards, scored 2 more touchdowns in a losing effort, 25-24. So you think at least some of it has to do with that he's comfortable pre-snap?
Yeah, because it's something that he's always done. And that's the thing that annoys me. And this is the former player in me coming out. Like, you drafted me 6th overall with me in this stance. And
Right.
I ran for 20 million yards in this stance. Like, why are you trying to change me now? Like, let me do what I do, because it's not a fundamental or a technique thing. It's a personal preference of the offensive coordinator, not the running back coach, but the offensive coordinator. And so it's like, nah, I'm going back to my stance. Willis McGahee, who was about 4 inches taller, I think Willis was like almost 6'2", 6'1", and some change. If you go back and look at his stance, he stood just about straight up. And I'm speaking from a running back standpoint. Like, I switched my stance so much trying to find what works best for me. So I did the straight up, I did the hands on the thigh, I did the hands on the knees, and I've experimented with a bunch of different stances until I found the one that was most comfortable for me.
Interesting. Yeah, you don't even think about it if you're just watching it and not, the wide receiver stand a certain way. I know there's variations. Offensive linemen have different ways they like to get down. I guess as you go, every position is sort of is different. Ashton Jeanty brings back his signature stance, and there it is, straight up. Like, he looks like he's a mannequin at Kmart.
I mean, but also too, you got to understand this kid's 5'7", 5'8".
Yeah.
And so if he goes with the hands on the knee, it's going to drop him down to 5'5". And so he's not going to be able to see past the quarterback, past the offensive line. Him standing straight up now allows him to see the defense, see things pre and post snap.
Right.
Right. So backers moving with the motion, that's going to dictate his read. Right. Or defensive lineman moving and shifting. If they're running inside zone and he's got to read the 3 technique and field the 1 technique, well, if the 1 is now a 0, by the time the ball snaps, these are things he can't see if he's 5'5". And he's now
just
versus him being able to stand up and see the landscape of the defense. So shout out to you, young fella.
Ashton Jeanty, looking like the Ashton Jeanty we thought we were going to get. And so keep standing up. There you go. All right, that's it. Ran a little long today because I had to spring my quarterback rankings on you, but that was a fun conversation. So that is it for us here with the first pick. We'll be back Monday. What are we doing Monday, Ryan?
Hey, we're going to ran it back on Mondays with our guy, JJ.
That's right. Jonathan Jones, our NFL Insider. Every Monday we talk about the weekend that was in the NFL. In the meantime, thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. Please subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. Give us one of those players to talk about, and we will see you guys in the next one.